One of the greatest things of entrepreneurship is the ability to use it as a tool for personal growth and development. And when I think of that concept, the number one guy that stands out for me in the property management space is Tony Cline. Not just because he transformed his body after a health scare from being completely out of shape to being an ultra athlete that has run 200-mile races in back-to-back formats, completing a triple crown, as they call it, but he's also transformed property management businesses. And he helps people go from being the most important person in the day-to-day to the most important person in the company that is not as important in the day-to-day. So this conversation with Tony is all about the three types of transformation that you need to go through as an entrepreneur. One is to become that entrepreneur, transform into that, then to become that leader that can make herself small. And then three is the personal transformation, the physical, the spiritual, the mental. This is a frame-breaking conversation with a guy who truly breaks frames. Tony Cline. Enjoy. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. Tony. This is the Frame Breakers podcast, right? Where the premise. Have you listened?
Oh yeah, every episode so
Okay,
far.
excellent.
Oh yeah,
Cool. So excellent, because I listened to all of your episodes, as you know, as I proved last night.
Yeah.
Premise around it isn't just technology, right? It's just this idea that things are changing and people doing it differently right now need to be highlighted to normalize this idea of change, leveling up, these different kinds of things. I see you as a guy that is known for transformation in my brain, right? Like you from the starting in this idea that you went from being in this like life or death kind of like sickness situation to becoming an ultra endurance athlete maniac to helping folks transform from accidental entrepreneurship into business owner and then eventually growing teams under them and stuff like that. When I described that to you, did it take you a while to be like, oh yeah, he's right? Or do you immediately identify with that stuff?
No, I identify with it.
Okay.
I think that same transformation that I did with my health and my personal life, I also, looking back, had that same journey in my property management business. You know, I initially got into property management by accident, which is not a shock. Most people do. But I wound up buying a real estate brokerage. And when I found out that uh, we were doing our due diligence on the brokerage side, they're like, "Oh yeah, we also manage these 31 doors." And so I had no intention of getting into that property management, just like I had no intention when I first started walking around the block by my house to become an athlete that runs 200 plus mile races. And I took that same transformation in business. I started small as an incremental progress over time, focusing on what I'm really good at. And, you know, I don't run or participate in triathlons. I also don't do HOA management. Like, I get really good at the single family home management. And then what I learned, I was able to help other people to go through those same transformations.
I'd love to hit on three inflection points for me as a business owner and as a person. The first one is going from the do everything entrepreneur to the intentional entrepreneur, then going from this like intentional entrepreneur to the business owner, right? How you get to the point where you level up and have layers of management underneath you, and then the physical, mental transformation piece of it. And I'd love to start, since I think you and I have talked about this, right? Most property managers are somewhere in that like 150 to 350 doors range. They're probably closer to that intentional, like do everything entrepreneur to the intentional piece. What's the level up? What is the frame that they need to break that they're kind of like beholden to begin with?
Well, most people, when they're just starting out, they need to eat, right? So even if they have savings put back to get into property management, which a lot of them come from being real estate agents, so a lot of them don't have that savings. So they're looking at, I just need to eat. And so everything looks like a steak. And they just start bringing on every client and they start figuring out, okay, well, this person wants this done this way. I can do that because I have the bandwidth. This other person wants it done this other way and I can do it because I have the bandwidth. And they essentially build themselves into a prison that they can't escape from because they've done things in a unique way for different people. They've let other people kind of drive where the business is going, and they don't have the ability to scale that because what they've set up isn't scalable. And so that first thing that we need to do, you talked about kind of going through this transition of fixing the business and then fixing the mentality. And it's almost reverse. You've got to get really intentional. And most people don't do this. I didn't do this. Most people don't start with, what do I want the business to look like in 2 or 3 years?
Yeah.
They start with, I got to eat.
It feels like when you're in that stage, you're like, sales can solve anything, right? Like, you're like, if I can sell it, then I can just
Yeah.
figure it out on the back end. And like you said, you build yourself into a prison. To me, that speaks to me in my marketing business, right? I was just kind of chasing this thesis. I wanted people to give me an opportunity to prove this like community thing works. And then I kind of did it. And you kind of asked me before why I kept my business intentionally small.
Yeah.
It was mostly because I hadn't figured out how to break out of that trap until very, very recently. What's the you said it's a mental transformation. For me, it was a self-worth thing, right? Like it was a yes, I had figured out that I wanted to serve people, but I hadn't figured out how to prioritize valuing and serving myself in a way that allowed me to serve more people. Is that a common thing? Is it a different kind of transition that people need to go through?
I think you nailed it, and I'm gonna go out a limb, and I'm going to guess that when you started surrounding yourself with the right people, being in the right environment, your idea of your self-worth changed.
I'm kind of a weird guy. I've been in It was a very different thing for me. It was very extrinsic because I've always been surrounded by very successful people, and it was about, like, whether I belong in that group.
So I'm not talking about successful people, I'm talking about the right people. So when I started working, in my health journey, I started walking around the block and started searching out people. And if you want to learn to run 50 miles, you start hanging around people who run 100 miles, and it normalizes that 50 isn't even halfway. It's like half as hard as 100, and it's the easy half. And so it's the same thing in business. If I want to grow and scale a big business, I got to put myself in the situation with people who are trying to do the same thing, who are not just trying to be successful in their own right, but be successful in a way that I can learn from them and they can learn from me. And it's about creating your tribe, so to speak.
Thank you for that reframe. You're right. It was the right people. It wasn't just the successful people. A big moment for me came. I guess I had two big inflection points. One was I have this like we call it the account buddies. I have this like group of
Yeah.
accountability that we started all playing spike ball on Sunday mornings, and eventually the eight of like the 25 of us that were doing this became really good friends, and we're like, let's make this into more. And we meet once a quarter for a full day to just like talk about how we're doing with our goals and whatever. And one of those meetings, we go away and like go to like a lake house and do wakeboarding
Yeah.
or whatever, right? We do this hour of reflection. And in that hour of reflection at one of these retreats, I was just like reflecting and something came to me that said, nobody's going to do it for me, right? I was going through this like, should I buy out a partner? Should I do all these things? And that was one moment of being surrounded by the right people that allowed me to take control, buy out my partner, and do that. And then the next moment was one of my clients, Matt Cline, who at some point when I was just like, man, I'm just kind of like hustling and blah, 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 and this and that, and trying to make it happen. Like after all this, like I took all this debt. And he's like, no, no, you've done it, dude. Like you are a CEO. Like stop thinking of yourself as just like a hustler because most people don't go through that hard decision of like embracing the really hard thing to get to the other side and get it over with. So you are a business owner. And to me, being surrounded by that group of people, the validation of him, getting away from the worker mentality and into the business owner mentality of folks absolutely made me reframe my thinking. Greg Cohen is another guy from JWB, right? Like
Huh.
it was my clients and that group of guys that really was the ones that reframed it for me. That's kind of what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch on the finance piece a little bit, like I have nothing against people who have a lot of money. I have nothing against people who have very little money. I really don't think that that should be a determining factor in
Yeah.
in your self worth. A lot of people I know a lot of people that have a lot of money and their ego is based on how well they keep that money and how well they build it and spend it. And so their whole personality, their whole self-image is based around that. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about who you are, not what you have. And I think being around the right people that can help you be who you need to be, who you were called to be, who you want to be, is what makes all the difference in happiness, in just being at peace, and then seeing the right vision and having the guts. The One of our core values in our company is to be courageous. And there's a difference between bravery and courage. To be brave is to not have fear and march into battle and to conquer. To be courageous is to have that fear and march into battle anyways
Yeah.
and have that victory.
Are you a Brene Brown guy? Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like this idea of like there is no courage without vulnerability and
Yeah.
embracing vulnerability is a big piece. Is that something that you see a
Yep.
lot? Like this idea of like starting to embrace the vulnerableness of it and leaning into that?
Yep. Well, yesterday, you and I spent a little bit of time together, and we talked a little bit about some of the things that we were vulnerable about. And you can't build relationships. You can't fix things. You can't have smarter people than you offer solutions for you if you don't share what the actual problem is. So a lot of times we'll go to a conference and you run into other property managers at the conference, other business owners.
Yeah.
How's it going? It's great. Or I got this one thing with staff, but it's like it's surface level stuff. We're not building bonds. We're not helping each other solve problems. We're peacocking, walking around, talking about, oh, things are great. I have this many doors, which is totally irrelevant to how you're doing, how successful you are.
If I'm gonna put this back into the scope of the conversation, what I'm hearing is that moment when you first are able to break the dam of this person that's just fixing the sales and building their own prison for yourself and starting to be intentional about building your business starts at the moment where you are able to actually be vulnerable around other people that then allow you to get to grow real bonds, get real feedback, get real, you know, support from folks because you're allowing yourself to have that. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. I ran my property management business after I purchased it. Like I said, they had 31 doors. They didn't know what they were doing. I took over. I didn't know what I was doing. I had experience in real estate, but not property management. And I ran that business for 11 years. And then I went, there was a NARPM conference that was a regional conference. They were doing regionals at that time. And I went to that conference and I sat next to these two ladies that had nothing in common with me. They were a little older than me. And they just started talking to me, asking me about my business, how long I'd been in business. And I thought, well, I've been in business for 10 years. I'm telling them the size of my company. And they tell me the size of their company. I'm like, oh, like, okay, they're the big dog at the table. And I thought that it was gonna be like they were gonna kinda talk down to me or look down to me. Each one of them was from Colorado Springs, the other one was from Fort Collins, so they're both over an hour and a half away. Each one of them said, "Why don't you come spend a day at my office?" And I spent a day with them and learned, and so while I was down there, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, man, this isn't working, and this isn't working," and just being vulnerable and finding those right people really helped accelerate what I believed was possible. And I think that's to touch on what we talked about before. If you're growing a business, but you don't really know where you're headed, then you get caught up in the day to day as that entrepreneur. You talked about trying to break through that
Yeah.
next level of what do I do to grow this business? I was scrappy in the beginning. I took everything. I've got all these different systems and I have all these different clients I'm trying to serve. And now I want to break out of that. I'm going to hire somebody, but I'm still stuck in the weeds. So I'm busy all day, but I have not grown my future. I have not created a future that's going to let me escape
Mm.
from this trap that I've created. I created a job I can't quit.
If I'm a property manager that's just kind of in that trap, right? Like let's say I have 200 doors, but it's really just been on blood, sweat, and tears, and I haven't really done this. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. That's other people. It's not me. How do I talk to my friend right now that's listening and get them to go from this is for other folks, it's not for me, but to help her understand it.
I think if you really spend some time thinking, okay, I'm going to create this fantasy world. All right, let's say we sat down and we said, let's write a movie. Let's make a movie. Okay, we need to know who the characters are. We need to know the settings. We need to know what the key challenges are. And we need to define all of this. And we create this fantasy world of where we want to go.
Mm.
And then we start figuring out what pieces we need to plug in. I don't think most business owners take the time to actually look at, what do I currently have? What challenges do I have? What am I trying to
Yeah.
overcome? And ultimately, what do I want the happy ending of this movie to be?
What's the first thing that you do in that piece? I'm assuming that this is part of your championship formula, this idea of, like, sitting down, visualizing a movie, and going through this?
Yeah.
What's the first thing? Do I think of what the end of the movie needs to be? Do I think of who the villain is? Do I think of, like, what's the first part of that?
Yeah.
If I'm just sitting there trying to reflect and think of a movie and I'm at a roadblock.
So the first thing that we do is I believe that a business only exists to serve the personal dreams and desires of the business owner. And from there, hopefully the business does good, right? And that's kind of an inherently baked in. But we need to get really clear on, what does that business owner want out of life? And honestly, that is a really uncomfortable conversation for most people, because most people don't actually know.
Yeah,
It's, I want to just get through the day. I want to get through the week. I got, my kids are going on spring break and we have a trip planned, and that's what I'm looking forward to. That's as far out as they've imagined. And so it's getting really clear on, what are the personal goals, and then what are the business goals. And then, and this is all the foundational framework. Like, this is not just property management stuff. This is
for
just
sure.
business stuff.
For sure. We're just talking to property
Yeah.
managers. Yeah.
And then we get really clear on the core values. And I've talked about our core values are in our own company, but I really didn't believe in them in the beginning. I thought core values is like, you put something on a poster, you stick it on the wall, okay, check the box. But really, your core values provide a framework and a filter for your team to, in absence of any other information, our actions and our decisions aligned with our core values. And then from there we go to, what's our vision of the future, and what's our mission? Why are we here today? What's the purpose of the company? And getting really clear on those things. And that's kind of the foundation.
Personal goals, business goals, core values, vision of the future, mission.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah.
A lot of that really speaks to me, man. I was kind of telling you how I had stuff started accelerating for me once I took that 90-day purposeful pause and was just like, where do I want to be in 10 years?
Yeah.
And once I figured out what my goal was, then it was really about figuring out how I want to play the game, which to me is my core values, right? Like I see building a business as, you're planning a road trip, you need to know where you're gonna go, and you need to know, how not to piss me off in the car if you're gonna go on this road trip with
Yeah.
me, right? Like, so how do we all agree to do this? And I find that core values, man, it's so underrated, because when people see it as a poster on a wall, they're not realizing that at the end of the day, having people on board that all not just agree with the destination, but agree on how we want to get there adds speed to it, because now every decision can be made much faster, right? Like, you don't have to be a part of every decision, because if they're like, if I know I'm going to just be held to the core values, if I'm doing this, then I'm not going to get in trouble,
Right.
right? Like, I might get it wrong, but it's just a learning opportunity.
Sure.
And then that becomes the ability to, what they say in the tech world, of like, fail fast, right? Like,
Mhm.
if as long as you're sticking to core values, you can be wrong, but it is a learning opportunity to, like, how to refine it without getting in trouble. And now the result is a compounding effect, right? Like, this idea of just like, not just we did all these things wrong, it's we did all these things wrong directionally towards our path in a way that we want to do it, to try to nail it in. And I'm a huge believer in core values. What's your company's core values?
So we've got courage, we
Mhm.
talked about,
Yeah.
right? Passion, being passionate about what you're doing. If you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be able to sustain it long term. And that
Mhm.
that ties back into the ultra running. Like, people that sign up for these races, I see people that sign up for these races, and if you look at their race history, they DNF, or they drop out like half the races. They're not passionate about that finish. Do or die, get to the end. I want to surround myself with people who are just as passionate about the things that, either the same thing I'm passionate about, or something that complements what I'm passionate about, in order to be able to succeed. Being learners and educators is another one. And we really want to make sure that we are not just learning information, but we're also using that information to educate others in the industry.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of how of behavior that has been based on core values, and the core value was a way that you like, you use the core value to either help somebody make a decision or encourage or coach or whatnot, or how somebody on your team or somebody on one of your clients' team can use core values as this, like, accelerator, compounding interest thing?
Sure. So going back to our conversation about the owner that's doing everything
Yeah.
that needs to get out of that. I talk about being in the entrepreneur extraction business,
Love
right?
this.
Pulling somebody out of the business. It's if you go back to the sports frame, they're the star player
Yeah.
on the team. And I don't want them to be the star player on the team. They don't want to be the star player on the team. They just think they have to be.
Yeah.
So we want to take them from being the star player, move them to being a coach on the field. The only way you can do that is by having this framework
Mhm.
where I know that they're going to be taking actions and making decisions based on the things that I've already pre-established,
Mhm.
right? You and I, we both talk about that one source of truth or the
Mhm.
single source of truth, having a place where people can go to see what our policies are, but also how we make decisions. And so I don't want people to continue to go to that entrepreneur to ask questions. I want them to know we have a system set up to be able to get the answer that we need. As the entrepreneur, we're still going to provide the answer, but not personally. So we're going to start with those core values, which is the filter of what we make decisions. Then we're going to lean on our policies, and our policies are what we do and why we do it. We're going to document those and give those to the team to say, okay, now that you know our core values, our mission, our vision, here's what we need to do to take action. And then we leave it up to them to actually figure it out
Yeah.
how to actually execute.
I've had this conversation with Peter Lohman a couple of times because I heard him say, I forget, I think he was probably talking with Jordan about it, but he talks about how everybody's really obsessed with systems, but it's really policies drive the
Yep.
systems, which then I was talking about it from a technology standpoint. It's like you don't buy technology until you know what you need it to do and why, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's it's systems should be driven by policy. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Above that is core values, right? He's like, yes. Right. It's like if you know the core values, then you know the policies you want to build because you all believe in it, which then tell you this at that point, it can go a level below you. You know the system that you need to build, or you can choose the system that you need to build as long as it's doing that. And within the system, then you find the tool that helps you.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yep.
love that. Um, I wanna I wanna move. So what I'm taking from this is that first frame that you need to break of going from hustler to, entrepreneur, business owner is this idea of taking the time to understand where you're going, detail your vision, write that script of the movie that you want to be in, get really, really clear on core values, and then make sure that the people underneath you understand that as well. And that's kind of like the beginning of it. I want to challenge a couple things. I want to just get conflicted for a second
Sure.
because I think it makes good podcasting. And then we'll move on to the next inflection
All right.
point, right? The first one is we talked about vulnerability as part of this thing. And what if I'm what if I say, yeah, cool, Tony, that's great that you can be vulnerable because you've already done things and like you have a track record. I feel like if I'm vulnerable, I'm going to look like I'm not in control, or maybe I'm oversharing, or maybe, like what if someone's going to use that, what I do vulnerability against me? Like, are you not setting me up to fail here if I go too far in vulnerability? What do you say about that?
I would ask you, are you already failing?
That's a good one. Yeah, yeah. Are you doing the same thing over and over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just about being vulnerable, it's about being vulnerable in the right setting with the right people. And we've already touched on that. Like there are things that, I've been with my wife since 1986. We started dating. So we've been together for a long
Yeah,
time.
you've got 3 generations of high school sweethearts getting married in your
Yeah.
family. We established this, yeah.
Yeah. Um, there are things in the business that I don't run by her because she doesn't have the proper frame to be able to give me proper advice. She'll give me emotional advice, she might give me logical advice, but she doesn't have the right frame to be able to give me accurate advice in all situations. And so it's about being vulnerable with the right people in the right situation. And so I also am not vulnerable in that same way with people on my team,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to tell my team, "Hey, I'm kind of worried about making payroll in November."
Yeah, yeah,
Like, we slow down. I know it's July right now, but I can see the trend. I know our cash flow. I might have to cut some people in November. What do you guys think about that? Like, I'm not going to have that conversation.
yeah.
But if I have other people that I trust that I'm vulnerable with, that they're vulnerable with me, we're kind of in it together. And we have the ability to have that background to make smart recommendations
Yeah.
and give, options or advice on.
I really like your answer of, are you failing and are you talking to the right people being vulnerable if it hasn't worked for you before, right? Because it's like, I mean, sure, if you're not in pain, then fine, then don't be vulnerable, do your
Yeah.
thing, like, "Oh, you don't need me," right?
Right.
Like, "Get out of here." But the right people is so rings true to me, right? Like, I have these conversations with my sister, I have these conversations with my wife, and I was like, "Hey, I go to you for these things and I go to other people for other things because I know that you have this like vested interest in me. I find that the people closest to you on a personal level, they seek comfort for you.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, you're seeking growth, and growth is by definition uncomfortable. So sharing the uncomfortable things to the folks that are motivated by your comfort is generally detrimental to you,
Yeah.
right? Like it's only going to add friction to it. And then the other thing that I'm going to say, which is an encouragement to our friend who's in this conversation with us right now, is the idea that I'm a fanatical friend maker. I'm a fanatical kind of like checker outer of groups and the ecosystems. And what I have found is that the property management ecosystem is a very abundant ecosystem.
Mm,
I find that the people in this space really are the type of folks that will like you lean into vulnerability and they're going to respond in kind, more so than other conferences spaces that I go to often
sure.
or in a past life. So I think if there is a piece of advice, it's like those rooms, the NARPM rooms, the events that you throw and like these kinds of like spaces where property managers get together is the right place to be vulnerable about something that you would like to improve in your life and in your business, feels like. Yeah.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Um, there was another thing I wanted to challenge you on, and see what you say, but I'm forgetting that. So let's talk
All right.
about so so that's the vulnerability piece. That's the getting to the intentionality part.
I wanna talk about something real quick, unless you
Please.
if you're on a
Go,
okay.
go.
So you mentioned that, if I'm already not in pain or if things are already working, why do I wanna be vulnerable? And I didn't intend to talk about vulnerability this whole time, but,
No,
we're
it
we're
it's
we're on the
about
we're on the chain.
yeah, yeah.
So, um, we talked about the book Comfort Crisis, and in that book, they talk about the misogi, which is, you go on these journeys, you do these things, and, a true misogi in the fashion of at least the way they talk about it in this book, you have to have a 50% chance of failure
Yeah.
in order for it to really count. And so I think that most people have not put themselves out there. They're afraid to take that first step because they're afraid to fail on that first step. And we talked about the fact that on every one of my 200-mile races, I've learned that there's about 4 times that I want to quit. There's just something going on. There's something, either I'm sleep deprived, I need fuel, I need to eat something, I need my hydration, my electrolytes are off, something. And by having the right crew there with me, by having pacers that go with me that can say, "Hey, you know what? You need to take a little food. You still have too much water in your bottles. You need to drink some of that water." Um, Having those people that are on that journey with you makes all the difference. And it's not about, am I gonna fall? Am I gonna fail? I fall probably 3 times a month when I'm out running. It just happens, you
Yeah,
know? And that's just part of the journey, but,
yeah.
you don't stay down when you fall down, you get back up and you keep going, and I think that most people stay stuck at where they're at because they don't have the right crew, they don't have the right people around them to encourage them to say, "Yeah, it sucks. You fell down. Get back up, let's go."
That's excellent. Yeah. So what's the any advice on finding a crew, right? Like there's obviously, you and Mark talk a lot about coaching. I think coaching is a total shortcut, right? Like coaching and consultants, right? Like surround yourself with the people that you want to be with. Um, going to these events, I think is a shortcut. Anything else that you see works for folks?
Obviously, because I am in the coaching business,
Yeah.
I recommend that. But also, when I was running these 200-mile races, I ran a race one year, finished in 99 hours. The guy that won it finished in 55 hours. I finished mid to back of the pack that first year. I hired him as a coach and wound up finishing in the top 10 the next year. So it's not just about the efforts, but it's about the knowledge and the framework that you apply to be able to achieve at a higher level. There are people out there who are doing or who have done what you want to do, and it's connecting with them. So obviously, I think hiring a coach is well worth the money.
Yeah.
I don't think it costs you. I think it makes you money. But aside from that, if you weren't in a position to be able to do that, finding one or two people in your market or out of your market, it doesn't matter, to be able to say, this is what I'm dealing with. And what are you dealing with? How can I help you?
What about if I'm somebody that's just like, oh, man, I'm just getting started in my property management journey and I want, I don't have a bunch of cash flow. I'm kind of like elbow greasing this thing. Um, why would I might feel like if I reach out to somebody that's been doing it, they might just be like, "Ah, dude, get out of here. Like, go figure it out on your own. Like, you have nothing to offer me." What would you say to somebody that's worried about asking for advice from someone that's like a league above them or two leagues above them if they're trying to get surrounded by them? Is that?
How many, I would ask them, how many people have turned you down?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't come to me with these preconceived, made up challenges that you haven't encountered yet.
And
Right? Come to me. You have my permission to reach out to me directly. If you've approached 5 people in or outside your market and said, "Hey, let's have a informal mastermind. Let's have some conversation." If you get turned down by 5 people, you reach out to me and I will make sure that you get connected and I will help you.
what's the right way to ask for that? Like, is it, hey, I seek mentorship, mentor me, or
I mean,
yeah,
that's better than not asking anything,
yeah,
right? But I would just say, look, I'm new in the marketplace. I've been kind of watching, seeing
yeah.
who is got their act together, and you really seem to run a great business. Could I just buy you lunch?
Yeah. I find that most people, right, human beings are happiest when they're in service.
Yep.
If you approach someone with a genuine observation of something that you've seen of them, right? Like you're reaching out to someone because you know they're doing something right, right?
Right.
So it's like, this is what I've observed from you. This is why I admire you. This is what I'm struggling with, and I feel like you could help me, right? Like, is there an opportunity for that to happen? Is kind of like a good little framework
Yeah.
of how I ask for things. Yeah, I was talking to my buddy Zach at Lead Simple University, and he was just kind of going through it, right? He was in a partner battle and this and that. And I was like, you should lean into being in this event, and starting with that conversation. Right? Like, instead of talking about all this stuff working with you, just walk in and be like, yeah, I'm here. This is what I'm going through. Have you guys ever experienced this? I bet you every conversation will be at a much higher level
Yep.
than walking in of just like, so how many doors you got?
Yeah.
Right? Because I've got 200, right? Yeah, cool. So, all right, let's move into the part that I literally have no advice to give anybody, right? Which is the leveling up from, all right, so you've become intentional. You're working with clients that, fit your profile. You know the value that you deliver. Your team is on they're on rails, right? Like they know what they're doing. They feel empowered, but you still don't have you're still making the decisions, right? Like you don't have a managerial level underneath you. What's the transformation from going from like, oh, this business is working, it's good, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, to I wanna stop being the star quarterback and start becoming, the coach, but not just the offensive coordinator. I wanna be the head coach, so I have coaches underneath
Right.
me and going there.
So first of all, I think that people will rise or fall to your level of expectations.
I like that.
So you have to set high expectations and hold people accountable, right? Love them, but hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And then I think the next thing that you need to realize is that your client changes. Your client goes from being your client to being your team.
Your team is your
Your
client.
team is your client. And when your team is failing at that scale, when you are in the leadership position and you have managers who are then managing the rest of the team, your sole responsibility is to make sure that they are hitting their goals. And when we're not hitting our goals, when we're not hitting our KPIs, comes down to one of three reasons. It's a system problem, a training problem, or a performance problem.
Mm.
That's it. If it's a system problem, I own that.
Yeah.
It's my responsibility to make sure I'm providing my people as part of our championship formula. We talk about our equipment, which is our
Mm.
tools, technology, training, and resources. It's my responsibility to make sure that I'm sending players onto the field with shoulder pads and helmet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Right.
I like to say that I've sucked at surfing for 18 years, and one of my biggest surf mentors is always like, "Dude, your equipment matters so much."
Yeah,
Hey, like I for the first like 10 years of my surfing, I was trying to do like short boards and long boards and mini boards and like and whatever. And finally, when I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna settle in on this longboard and own it
yeah,
and like surf small waves because it matters to me. All of a sudden, I knew how to surf, right?
yeah,
Like pretty quickly, right? So
yeah.
like that feels like the am I giving people the right tools to succeed and put them in the right place, right?
Right. So is a system problem
System problem. Yeah.
or a training problem. So now I've given you, if we give you the longboard,
Mhm.
but nobody ever tells you how, there's no YouTube videos, there's no anything to tell you how to use it. You don't know how to use it. So we need to make sure you get the right training for it. And I own the system, I own the training. So when we're having a question, a conversation about we're not hitting our target somewhere, as the business owner, I'm going to take 2/3 of the responsibility for making sure that we hit it. If I've given you the right system and you agree to that, and I give you the right training and you agree to that, then it comes down to performance. And if I'm building a championship team, I cannot have somebody on the team that is not delivering championship performance. Now, we can either figure out how to get you there or we can figure out how to trade you to a new team. But if I have 10 players on my team and nine of them are performing at that championship level, the 10th one isn't, the whole team fails. The whole team doesn't win that championship. The whole team doesn't perform at the level that they need to. So those other nine are counting on you
Yeah.
to bring in the right people with the right skills and the right position to be able to perform so that the whole team wins.
That makes a lot of sense to me when I have 1 out of 9 and 1 out of 10, right? What if let's say I have a team of 15 people.
Yeah.
I have 2 managers underneath me that each manage 7 and 8 people respectively. One of them is performing, one of them is not performing. How do you and the one that's not performing is like, "The system sucks." Right? Like, "I need this I need somebody to" like, "We're on the wrong PMS."
Yeah.
Right? Like, "Because this thing sucks, I can't do my job." How do you differentiate having that so when you don't have the bigger kind of like body of evidence and does, whatever the average, how do you work through that? How do you figure out whether it's the performance, system, or training?
I think that goes back to the movie that we were building,
Mm.
right? One of the things that when we talk about the game plan in the beginning with the core values, the mission, vision, there's a couple of other components in there that subcomponents that we need to talk about, which is identifying your target client profile and identifying your income and revenue streams. And when you stack all of those, you apply your policies, you apply your process, like that person may actually be right,
Mm.
but if everybody else is in line with where we're headed, they can't be a part of the team. So there may be some things that are wrong that we need to fix the system, and we're going to try to fix that. But if we believe we've provided the right tools, they they got to go. And that's a hard. I have that conversation all the time with entrepreneurs. They know, oh, it's going to be so much work to let this person go. They got to go,
Yeah.
but I put it off for 6 months because it's gonna be a lot of work to
Yeah.
get the right person in. But to have that person there, the wrong person for 6 months
Yeah.
is destroying your culture,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And culture, I love the word culture because it starts with the word cult.
Mm.
And I believe that a business owner really needs to be, you talk about being the chief evangelist, like
Yeah.
you need to be the evangelist for your cult.
Yeah.
You're creating a brand, a living, breathing organization. And something that's interesting to me when I heard this, I don't know why, but when I heard this, it blew me away. Like my mind just kind of expanded. Every person that knows you knows a different version of you. And it's the same with your business. Everybody that comes in contact with your business has the potential to know a different version of your business based on their experiences and interaction.
Yeah.
So we need to create a framework that provides a unified experience for as many people as possible.
I love the cult thing because, as you know, I'm an entrepreneur because I care so much about like the value of community as like a value driver, right? And to me, everything that works in community works in business too, right? Like
Yeah.
it's you have there is nothing more powerful than a group of people that really believe in something and really buy into the rules of the game in order to accomplish it and feel like they have a mandate to go out and add this value to the world, right? Like that to me, there's no difference between a really strong community and a really strong business. And I love that. What I what I heard underneath what you were saying in all of that is at some point as the business owner, before we got to this step, you had to get really clear about what you wanted and the rules of the game and how you want to play it. And there's inevitably, heavy as the head that wears the crown, inevitably at the head of the company, you're gonna have to take some gut decisions of, okay, this person might be telling me this, but my gut is telling me that, and this is what I want, and this is the change I want to make in the world. This is my vision for it. And if it's choosing between my vision or your vision, I gotta choose my vision
Right.
because the rest of these people believe in me. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as we do that entrepreneur extraction and we pull that person out, it becomes more and more important that they focus on, yeah, we say that, I should only do the things that I can do and I should
Yeah.
offboard or delegate everything else. So yeah, I might be really good at signing up new owners. But if I have somebody else on my team that can do that, I need to make sure that they have that skill set and that they're the best that they can be. I have the right person, provided the right equipment,
Yeah.
the right training, and then let them do that. And if I step into that, I may be able to close a little bit more doors, but I'm ignoring and turning my back to the things that only I can do as the leader. And the bigger the company grows, the more important that strategic thinking becomes, and that's where the advantage becomes for a lot of these businesses because a lot of owners continue to do we need to grow our portfolio. So I'm going to step back into that role or something like that. And so they remove themselves from the most important thing that only they can do. They can only they can set the vision of the company and the direction and make those hard hiring and firing decisions. And if they're doing other things, nobody's doing that.
Yeah. As you know, I listened to your podcast. As I was listening to your interview with Brandon, something that really broke the frame for me was this idea of as you develop these folks underneath you, there's a certain point where you're just like, you don't need to come to the office. That's not your highest, most valuable resource. And you got to find value in other things. And as we're going through this conversation, and I'm starting to think, did I say conversation right there?
It
And
is, yeah.
as we're going through, as we're going through this conversation, and I'm thinking of, okay, so if I'm a great salesperson, I still can get a great salesperson, and then I got to find something else that only I can do.
Right.
And then, you're going to continue to replace those skill sets. And I guess if I was to extrapolate that all the way through, the to having this business that you just run and everybody else is doing the day to day, you're not the most important person day to day, but you're the most important person for everything for the business
Right.
because you're the owner. I guess the ultimate thing of only you can do is paint that vision and be crystal clear on what we all believe and be that evangelist. Is that kind of like where you end up no matter what?
It is, and something people miss, I think, is it's not just about creating the vision and painting the vision.
Mm.
It's about shouting the vision and keeping that alive. I've encountered in my own experience and in the experience of my clients, when we think we've communicated where the company is going, who we are, what our core values are, what our policies are, when we think we've communicated that, we're probably about 30% of the way there because people need to be reminded way more than they need to be instructed.
That's so true, man. In the content game, that's so true, right? Like my past clients and Greg Cohen at JWB and stuff like that. He's like, dude, I feel like we're about to do this a show that we've done 10 times. I'm like, yeah, we've done
Yeah.
it 10 times. We're going to do it 100 more times, bro.
Yeah.
Right? Like you gotta keep repeating the thing that you most believe. I told you like Gary Vee was kind of the first guy that kind of opened up my aperture into like this whole game.
Sure.
And that dude says the same three things for the last 10 years, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like content, self-reliance, like all these different things. But yeah, I completely have grown to really believe that. It's like there's no chance that you could possibly have repeated something so much that it no longer needs to be repeated if it is the number one thing that you believe.
Yeah. Yeah, and to go back with that, the story about the podcast with Brandon about him removing himself, I have a lot of clients that are at that stage where they've now built a really good business and they don't know what the next phase is. And so we work with them to figure out what that next phase is. And a lot of it comes back to what we talked about in the beginning, which was why are you building this business to begin with?
Yeah.
And what is the most important thing for the business and what's the most important thing for that business to be able to do for you personally?
Mm.
And there's I have a client and, I've shared this vision, so I have his permission to talk about this, but he was pretty burnt out with his business and it was going okay, but it no longer was fueling his soul, so to speak. And uh he had some staff turnover and some challenges in the business. And we started working together and we started talking about, okay, well, you're no longer passionate about this business, but what are you passionate about? And we started digging into it, and he has adopted 3 little girls, and
Yeah.
and he's really passionate now about giving back. So he actually created a charity to be the major sponsor for 100 orphanages. And so he has a charity called 100 Orphanages, and it's incredible to be the major sponsor of an orphanage
Just
overseas. Costs about $10,000. That's it. You for a whole year, you can be the major donor. And he lit up and started talking about this. I'm like, well, does your team know that this is important to you? He's like, no. Does the community know that this is important to you? And he said, no, it's just something I kind of do. I kind of feel silly like talking about like what I'm trying to do or give back. And we started building on that. His team got energized, his team got behind it. It's not his property management company name charity, it's this separate thing, but they're united. And now we do 5K runs where clients show up, tenants show up, vendors show up, and it's uniting people. And so we didn't talk a lot about this, but finding your what makes you unique, your unique abilities,
yeah.
and why people should work with you. It's the same thing for your team. Why should people come to work with you? What is bringing them and making it your company sticky? And you got to have people that believe in your vision and your dream, whether it's inside the company, outside the company. Giving them something to belong to is
So
super
good.
important.
So good. Like, and I hear so much value in that story and just that is a unique thing, right? Like you want to talk about building a cult. If you get people on like, hey, we're working and yeah, it's day to day and we're like plunging toilets or coordinating
Yeah,
maintenance or whatever, but at the end of the day, we're building 100 orphanages for this type of stuff. Like, man, that's a real motivator. And anybody that isn't motivated for that is not gonna be a good member of that team.
right.
And it's a great kind of like bat signal for it. And then on top of that, one of the core beliefs in my whole idea of like community creation for business development, the the unit economics of that is there is no more powerful way to acquire a client than somebody who is all in on you, having a conversation with somebody that's like wondering whether to do business with you without you in the room.
Right. Yeah.
If you get to the point where you have a mission big enough, where you have a 5K to like build orphanages, and you're now creating a moment where like a community that is all in on this thing that you have created, and your clients are there, and your team is there, and prospects are showing up to that, I have to assume that that is a powerful, powerful client acquisition tool that completely differentiates him from anybody else in the market that only he can bring to his business that has all these wonderful externalities that also gives him purpose.
Yeah.
I love that, man. That's
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite kind of like things in business. As you know, I believe that we are in an inflection point,
Yep.
right? This idea of right AI is this kind of I don't know if it's the third, fourth, or fifth industrial revolution or whatever we want to call it, but it's as big as electricity coming to town. It's as big as the internet coming to town, and particularly right now where we've uncorked the bottle of generative and now agentic is coming in is really setting us up for a future that's very different from the past. when this stuff happens, and this is something that's happening worldwide, it's also happening in the property management industry. The property management industry is also going through another giant inflection point, which is the great generational wealth transfer is completely changing the clientele from servicing boomers to servicing millennials. And that is, so now the tooling has changed and the demand of the client has changed and how they want to be treated is completely different. And when this stuff happens in industries, it sets up for something called the innovator's dilemma, which is essentially the idea that the people that you think have all the resources to go all in on this and build a beautiful future end up valuing their past success more than the current state of the world and the future state of the world. And as I think of who you work with the elite property managers that are really you're working with folks that are trying to reach the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So they're the I equate this, someone like a Brandon to me is the type of person that is more susceptible to being completely disrupted by an incumbent than an incumbent being able to take over his market share, right? What are the conversations that you're hearing around AI, how people are seeing it, and are you seeing enough urgency and the right perspective going into this thing? What are your overall thoughts on where the state of property management is for your clients and how they're perceiving this stuff?
Well, first of all, my opinion is one opinion, and
Yeah.
I'll share that with you.
Yeah.
I think right now we're in a state where we're a bunch of soft scrambled eggs. Like we're not fully cooked. Like the pot is still being stirred. We don't know what actually is gonna settle. And there's a really weird example. I don't know why I use, but um, AI is so interesting because it continues to accelerate what's possible. And so we're no longer on this trajectory where we can kind of forecast what's possible 24 months from now.
Mhm.
We're on this infinite trajectory where what gets created today creates what gets created tomorrow. And then that creates what gets created the next day. It's not like we're on this single line. And so for me to give my opinion on where AI is going to end up, I don't think there's a lot of value in that. But I think where there is value is the people who have figured out how to remove themselves from the day to day and do that strategic thinking can pay more attention to the movement and what tools are available, what new systems are available. We talk about, do we have the right players on the team? Maybe it's not the right player we need, but rather the right equipment that we need. Maybe we need to bring in something that will act and take care of some of the surface level type of transaction, and then let the people that really have the expertise that have to step in, they're freed up to do that.
Yeah. If you understand that change is coming and AI is this giant industrial revolution, you're going to want to work with a company that is AI by DNA. And that, my friend, is Vendoroo. We are a native agentic AI solution built from the ground up with this assumption that the AI future is here. And what Vendoroo does, it is able to handle 80 to 85% of all maintenance work orders from beginning to end, while elevating that extra 15 to 20% so that you can actually take care of it. And most importantly, just getting you out of the grind and the forever firefight of maintenance so you can do other things. Like one of our clients hired Vendoroo.ai, and within 6 months, the amount of time that saved her from maintenance, she dedicated herself to business development. She started adding 10 doors a month over the last 6 months. It's been 60 new doors. It's been a huge change, huge growth for her business, way more profitable. So if you want to do that, you want to get yourself out of the mundane, get your team out of the mundane, let them focus on stuff that really, really matters. Go to Vendoroo.ai, book a demo with us, and we would love to help you build an agentic AI property management business. Vendoroo.ai, book a demo. Enjoy the rest of the show. I mean, that's perfectly aligned with what. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Nobody knows where it's going.
Yep.
All that we know is that it's going to be different, right? Like that anybody that's betting on the past being like the future being more like the past, and that to me seems foundationally first principles wrong. Like the future will inherently be different than the past. To your point, it does feel like the most important moment in the history of property management to remove yourself from the day to day
and be able to make these strategic bets on, start tinkering with what the future can look like so that you become the Netflix, not the Blockbuster
Yeah.
of property management. And what I love about this conversation is that it's talking about it from a mindset of the owner, how I start to remove myself. And then as far as the inflection point in AI is kind of what I've talked to you about, right? It's this idea that while generative has been this thing that can help you be more efficient at the things that you do, agentic, as it starts to roll in, starts to become that thing that can really just kind of like take it.
Yeah.
Right? That can just like own a problem, like be an employee that then frees you up to start thinking about these things. So I do think it is a moment in time where this conversation is probably as valuable as it'll ever be to remove yourself mentally and then to know that there's tools in there that can actually do that itself. So I think it's great. What are folks that are not taking this have you encountered people that you're like, "Ugh, I don't think you're taking this as seriously as you should?"
I think it's kinda like people trying to cross the freeway. Like, they know they need to get to the other side, but they don't know what's gonna hit them, and so they're standing on the side waiting for somebody to change the light, but there's no light to change. There's nobody telling you clear direction, it's time to move.
Yeah, because there
You
isn't.
there isn't, you
Yeah.
just gotta go. While you were talking, something popped into my mind, which is I think AI is 2 things at the same time. First thing is it's the great equalizer, meaning you can come into this business and apply the right tools, the right framework, the right methodology, and immediately catch up
Yeah,
to the institutional player.
that's it.
And then at the same time, it's the great accelerator because the people who figure out how to maximize their impact in it, there's a gal named Courtney Dauwalter in the ultra running world, and she has this quote that she said in a presentation one time, and it's the race doesn't start until the wheels fall off, and the wheels fall off for everybody. So at that moment of great change, when you think everything is going along just great, and all of a sudden there's some big disruptor, that's your moment of excellence. That's what you've trained for. You don't train for everything to go great as expected. You train for when something comes along that is unexpected. And I think that's where we are with AI. It's going to give you the ability to catch up to the incumbent,
Yeah.
and then it's going to give you, if you focus on it correctly, it's and the incumbent might take it and run and use that acceleration, or they might be caught in that the innovator's dilemma. And if that's the case, somebody brand new to the market can come in and own the market by using the right tools.
I don't wanna flatter you too much, but that's very similar to this piece that one of the partners at Sequoia Capital just put out. That exact take, right? It's called AI or Die. I'm probably gonna do like a mini episode on it
Yeah.
this weekend. But he starts it with this quote from Senna, the famous race car driver, that's like, "It's really hard to overtake 10 cars in a sunny race, but when there's a rainstorm, it gets a lot easier to overtake 10 cars."
Yeah.
Right? And that's like that's the moment that we're in. It's exactly what we said. I love that. Tony, anything else, man? Anything else you wanna hit on?
All right. I want to talk about really quick
Yeah,
an event that we're doing,
please.
right? I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of stuff I could talk about with
Yeah, yeah.
business. There's, our championship formula, how to work with us, all of this stuff. And if somebody wants to work with me, I'm sure you'll give them a way to do that. But I want to go back to that community building that you and I love so
Yeah.
much. We're going to be taking a trip
Mhm.
into Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
We're going to hike rim to rim
Yeah.
from the north rim to the south rim. And you asked me yesterday, do I need to bring a sleeping bag? No, man. We're doing this in one day.
Let's go.
We're gonna bond. There's gonna be 30 of us in the industry, on the property management industry, and that's the type of thing that where you talk about being vulnerable. There are things I've shared out on a trail with people that nobody else knows because you're out in nature,
Yep.
you're away from cell phone. There is no cell signal in the Grand Canyon, and so you're gonna be there being intentional, being in the moment, and with people that really matter, and those are the types of things that I just love focusing on and the things that we're rolling out more and more, and, I can't wait to spend that time down there with you for a full, full day of going rim to rim.
I'm glad you brought that up. First of all, I'm terrified of it, but I couldn't be more excited for it. But that is what attracted me to you is the inherent knowledge that vulnerability connects going through hardship connects, and the type of event marketing that you're doing, right? This is an event marketing event for your business.
Yeah.
But the type of event marketing that you're doing is focused on that. Is focused on this taking people on a journey together where there is vulnerability embedded into it and there's like wide open space for real connections to happen. To me is like, oh, this dude's different. He sees something that most people don't see that I believe in more than anything in the world, right? Like for me, my first version of that was when I got really involved in nonprofits. I realized that, man, putting together a BS happy hour with people is a great relationship building thing because you're like working on achieving a goal together.
Hmm.
And that journey has given me my best friends from that era, right? So the way that you put events together to me is something that is desperately needed in the market, right? The value prop of events have changed. Pre-COVID, it was just like, let's get a big speaker out there. People are going to show up for a speaker and like, let's bring a whole bunch of vendors to pay for it. And then let's bring the buffalo down to the watering hole so the lions can eat.
Right.
Right. Um, People have gotten wise to that. Content is a commodity. You can see it on YouTube. People go to events for um, the exchange of peer-to-peer tacit knowledge.
Hmm.
And the best events have figured out how to lubricate that the best way possible. And in my opinion, the best way to do it is exactly what you're doing. So I'm all in on your event. I'm all in on this Grand Canyon event. I'm all in on this future mastermind that you're doing because I know you think this way. And I think you are going to be the next great event marketer of this industry beyond whatever else you're already doing is the bet that I'm making. So
Well, I
I'm all
appreciate
in on
that.
that.
There's just like the people that have properties that we want to manage, they think we're all the same until we give them a reason to think that we're different.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in the coaching business. I made a list the other day. There's like 26 coaches that I know of that have entered into the space. And frankly, they're all the same. They're all talking about policy, process, software. I gotta automate myself. And to me, it's deeper than that. To me, there's something. I'm not trying to fix your business. I'm trying to fix you as a person so that you can fix your business. And together we're going to go on that great journey. And we're going deep. We're not going a mile wide. I'm going deep with a smaller select group of folks,
And then
and
25 miles away.
and then we'll go 25 miles wide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I think that's a frame breaking concept right there, right? Like this idea of whether you're a coach or a property manager, how you differentiate, how you how you cannot be pooled into just like a whole bunch of other folks that are like impossible to tell the difference on is really, really important. Like I said, I try to do that for everybody in my head anyways, because I was born very judgmental. Right. But I see you as you're the one coach that's working at the top 5 steps of the of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like at the top of that pyramid, you're the transformation coach, not just the process, businesses, systems, tech, whatever, not the scale your business guy. And I think if I'm a property manager listening to this right now, I would think, how can I create those experiences for my clients? Right? Like there's nothing that doesn't say that I can't invite, I can't start a running club with my clients, right?
Yeah.
Or a walking club with my clients, or a let's get better at cooking, or whatever kind of like experience that you can do. Or, if you are going through your own personal transformation, your own thing that you're trying to achieve, blasting that out to your email list and your friends and creating some kind of shared experience that, people don't think of it as event marketing, but that's event marketing,
Sure.
and that's really that at the end of the day in a world where it's you got to be a real technician on Google and Facebook ads and whatever to stand out. That is the low hanging fruit inside of a community that I think people can really, by following you, just kind of like learn through osmosis and being a part of these things. I think it's a lot of value.
Yeah. Thanks. I think if you were to let's just use the 5K because running is something that I know
Yeah.
just as well as I know property management. So let's just kind of combine those two things. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Could be a paint club, could be whatever.
Could be go to Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah. If a lot of your clients live out of state, it doesn't matter. You invite them anyway. It's not about how many people show up. It's about how big of an impression you make in this event being something that people would want to go to. I don't know if I could buy the plane ticket to come out to go to this thing, but man, I wish I could be there. That sounds pretty cool.
Dude, when I first started making content, it was about networking. One of my core videos was called Be Inviting. Like
Yeah.
the ability to invite. It's one of the reasons I love being involved with charities because you always have something to invite people to, right? Like being inviting and just like, oh, I thought of you. Hope you could come. Sure, you live in Alaska, bro, and I invited you for a Tuesday night dinner. But like that ping of just like, oh man, this guy's doing some cool stuff. He's got friends, he's got stuff going for them, and he thought about me.
Yeah.
That's a huge piece that I think is missing from a lot of people's playbook. That's super low hanging fruit. Cool, man. Good stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Tony, man, I like to end just kind of with a compliment, right? I've never said that out loud, but I do this on everything. And to you, I think I told you this yesterday, right? Like everybody in my life, I moved around a lot as a kid, so I never had kind of like a formed identity of who I was. So I just kind of like have developed this trait where I buddy up close to people that I want to like get something from, like in a selfish level. And and for you, I see you as this guy that's really has figured out how to embrace hardship and do great things. And the more that I learn about business and life, I know it's an infinite game, and I know that the ability to your ability to endure hardship and keep a level head is directly correlated to the outcomes that you can create for yourself and others. And I see in you someone that's really figured that stuff out and somebody that I really want to be like in that arena, whether it is, I don't know if I'm ever going to run, I'm probably not going to run a 100-mile race. I've done a half marathon. You've made me want to run a marathon though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and just this idea of like embracing pain to avoid suffering and find pleasure and find joy in life is something I think you do really, really well, man, and I'm really pumped for our friendship. Thank you for this.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Now we're done.